everyone. I'm Liz Chudoba with Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, and I'm here with my colleagues Julie Vastine with the Alliance for Aquatic Resource Monitoring and Emily Bialowis from the Isaac Walton League of America. And we are with the Chesapeake Monitoring Cooperative and going to talk to you today about volunteer engagement in our water quality monitoring program. So just to orient you a little bit, we are located in the Chesapeake Bay watershed in the eastern part of the United States. The Bay watershed itself is 64,000 square miles, that it encompasses 7 different jurisdictions from New York down to Virginia. So the Chesapeake Monitoring Cooperative was formed in 2015 through a cooperative agreement between the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay and the Chesapeake Bay program. We have 4 core partners that are part of the development team and service providers for the Chesapeake Monitoring Cooperative, which includes the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, the Isaac Walton League of America, the Alliance for Aquatic Resource Monitoring, and the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science. We all have our specific areas of expertise and regions that we work in order to create a cohesive program across the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And our goal is to provide all of the technical support in order to integrate this data across the watershed into the Chesapeake Bay program partnership. So now I'm going to turn it over to Julie Vastine, who's going to talk through how we actually engage volunteers across the programs.
Thank you so much, Liz. And as Liz said, I'm Julie Vastine with the Alliance for Aquatic Resource Monitoring, and we're housed at a small liberal arts college in the state of Pennsylvania. When we're talking about the ways that we engage volunteers across this very large region, there's a number of steps you want to take into account in your planning process. So those of you listening in today, you might be at different stages of engaging volunteers, but if you are at the outset of starting a volunteer monitoring program or aquatic citizen science project, here are some of the steps that you want to engage. Organizational check-in, making sure that you see the role that volunteers play in your project, go through a planning process, develop policies and forms for your volunteers, recruit, retain, and celebrate your volunteers. For those of you who are at the beginning stages of planning for volunteer engagement, there are a number of fantastic resources out there, and this is a guide that might be useful to check out. So this link you can click on at your leisure. But when you talk about volunteers who engage in the Aquatic Citizen Science Project or volunteering their time to collect scientific data on their waterways, they fall in this framework for volunteer involvement. You're asking most likely for volunteers to go out on a regular basis to collect data. So when you look at the different Chesapeake Monitoring Cooperative community partners, you see some partners going out on a weekly basis, monthly basis, several times a year basis. And as a result, you're asking your volunteers to engage in a long-term data collection process. And with that comes some specific stewardship and engagement strategies that you might wish to use. When you're talking about some of the motivations for volunteers to spend their free time helping to collect data, there's a lot of different reasons why people volunteer in general. Benefit family or self, help a cause, feel a sense of accomplishment. There's lots of different motivations here. If you turn specifically to look at folks who are collecting water quality data, these are some of the motivations we have found in surveying our volunteers. People wanting to protect the environment, an interest in their local water quality. They want to do something good, and something that's happening in COVID times and a time of economic recession here. Those recent graduates from university trying to keep their skills current for when jobs might open up down the road. So those are an overview of some of the best practices when it comes to volunteer engagement and thinking about some of the folks and their motivations for monitoring. So in the Chesapeake Monitoring Cooperative time frame, Alarm launched a new stream monitoring program, and it's called Susquehanna Stream Team. And specifically, this is to engage volunteers to collect data in targeted areas where additional data are needed, or there are locations where we don't see data being collected by our states or the federal government. So we developed a standardized monitoring protocol, and we've been engaging volunteers at the local level with the anticipation that their data will be used not only at the local level, but shared with the state, as well as the regional federal Chesapeake Bay program that Liz mentioned earlier. So one of the things that we like to do when we're talking to our volunteers, especially in the recruitment process, we'll do things like we'll hold an info session 2 months before a workshop will take place so that we can cover the specifics of the program and talk about those volunteer expectations. These expectations also are written out in our volunteer policy guide. You can see the picture of the front page here to the right. And that's available on our website if you'd like to check that out. But it's important to lay out those expectations so that people, as they're signing on to volunteer their time for a specific amount of time, we ask our folks to sign up for 1 year at a time. They have a sense of what we're looking for from them. So with Stream Team, we're asking folks to participate in monthly stream testing, and that can take anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, depending on how far they need to drive to their site. We're asking them to do a macroinvertebrate or biological sampling event if their site is safe and feasible to do so. Given that the Chesapeake Monitoring Cooperative has a very detailed quality assurance project plan, it's essential that our volunteers keep their data sheets and also manage their data upload into our Chesapeake Data Explorer. We also ask folks to maintain and use their equipment according to the standard operating procedures, which is detailed in their monitoring methods manual. They participate in a quality control check twice a year, attend follow-up meetings, and stay in communication. Hopefully they're having a whole lot of fun while they're doing this. But at the end of the day, annually, our Stream Team volunteers are spending about 50 to 60 hours of their time throughout the year connecting to the program. In addition to laying out what we expect of our volunteers, we also put in our volunteer agreement what they can expect from us. And I think that's really important. When people are spending their free time devoting their free time to collecting water quality data, it's important to know what they can get from us. So we commit to being a constant resource, phone, email, video conferences. I can't tell you the number of emails we get on a weekly basis, but I'll get to that in a little bit. We commit to a minimum amount of communication 3 times a month. We're here to certify and verify that their data are credible and they're using their equipment correctly. We have an equipment loan and maintenance program. We're so thankful that through our grant, through the Chesapeake Monitoring Cooperative, that we are able to buy the equipment for volunteers, and then we're able to loan that out so they're not taking on that additional financial burden. And we are here to provide engaging workshops. We're here to facilitate follow-up meetings with training cohorts. And we also have open calls for anyone in Stream Team beyond their specific cohort to join in on open calls to talk about questions and concerns that they might have with the program. This slide, for one of our grants, we are specifically asked to document the amount of communication we have with our volunteers. And I gotta tell you, it was very eye-opening to look at Stream Team and the amount of communication that we have with folks. And so this slide details that. We have our program broken up by counties. So within our state, we have 67 counties, and we have currently piloted Stream Team in 3 of those counties. And then you can see the number of volunteers we've engaged, the active volunteers. We did lose some volunteers as a result of COVID, and 2 volunteers because they didn't pass quality control. So we have some specs about the volunteers and how many and streams and sites monitored. But the thing I'd really like to call the people's attention is, looking at the number of follow-up meetings, the information sessions, and all of these email correspondences. And somewhere in our files, we've also documented phone calls, which I would say is about a quarter in relationship to the email correspondences. So this gives you a sense of the amount of time it takes to really care and steward your volunteers. And so it's important to build that into your program, those expectations. It's half of someone's full-time job, and then it's a quarter of two other people's job to be able to carry out our Stream Team program. So that's the end of my case study on Stream Team, and I'm going to pass it off to Emily, and she will discuss additional benefits for volunteers and also highlight additional case studies throughout the region.
Thanks, Julie. I'm Emily. I'm with the Isaac Walton League, and we coordinate the Save Our Streams program and the Virginia Save Our Streams program, which are benthic macroinvertebrate monitoring programs. And the Virginia Save Our Streams program is now part of the CMC. So what that program means is we have folks who are out monitoring benthic macroinvertebrates 2 to 4 times a year in teams of 3 or 4. And what we've learned, because this program has been around 20 or 30 years, is that these teams sometimes can last for years, if not decades. And over the years, they've developed this sense of trust and community and being part of something larger than themselves. I personally went to a volunteer appreciation event a few years ago for our Virginia Save Our Streams monitors, and people got up and spoke about how they appreciated the program. And while they definitely spoke about how much they enjoyed monitoring itself, a lot of what they spoke about was the trust and relationships they built in these teams over the years, and how much they depended on one another and looked forward to quarterly benthic macroinvertebrate monitoring and how it was a cornerstone of their life. This benthic monitoring is also a great opportunity for outreach to new audiences. On the right here, you can see a bunch of kids at a benthic macroinvertebrate monitoring event. A lot of our teams take these monitoring events, which don't happen very often, as an opportunity to engage student groups and passersby so that they can learn about the local watershed and water quality of their streams, but also as an opportunity to share with the public other events that they do to help their streams, like cleanup events or stream walks or educational events. On the left is the group, the Severn River Association. They started a program with our help. They had little scientific background, but they were able to work with us to get this program started. And now they're using the chemical monitoring data they collect to create a report card on the health of the Severn River. And by using that information with the public, it's an opportunity, again, for outreach and to engage the community in other events to help protect the Severn River. And then last but certainly not least, groups are excited and additionally motivated to monitor by the fact that their data is being used and shared on a wider scale beyond their small watershed. And being part of the CMC exposes their program and their data to their state environmental agencies, the Chesapeake Bay program, and to the public. And it opens up opportunities for further collaboration, or perhaps gives them the opportunity for more funding to work to monitor further in their area. And now over to Liz to wrap it up.
Thanks, Emily. So in conclusion, it's important to highlight that while volunteers play an important role to all of our organizations in collecting water quality monitoring data, there are a lot of additional unexpected outcomes from volunteer engagement. We really see monitoring as a stepping stone by providing additional tools and resources to help people make personal behavior changes, from increased civic engagement to community education and all the other benefits we've discussed today. If you want more information on this topic, you can check out this great article referenced here, which came out in 2004 and takes a deeper dive into these unexpected outcomes. Thank you all so much for listening to stories from the Chesapeake Monitoring Cooperative and highlights of how we engage our volunteers.